Alright, now we're going to do section 3 of chapter 3, talk about lipids. And so lipids, you'll recall from the section 1 video, are the macromolecule of the four that does not really form true polymers. They're not just a bunch of monomers stuck together in these long chains. They come in different types, but each one has a set size. They don't come in larger and smaller versions. Like carbohydrates, they all have carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. However, they're not in a 1 to 2 to 1 ratio. As you'll see as we look at these, they tend to have approximately twice as much hydrogen as carbon, but many fewer oxygens than carbons. Okay, so the basic types of lipids are known as fats, oils, phospholipids, and steroids, and waxes. And so fats and oils are one type of lipid, and we'll see the difference between them in a second. So these two types are what are known as triglycerides. Let me see if I can spell here. Triglycerides. Okay, triglycerides. And what they consist of are 3 of these molecules called fatty acids, this thing called glycerol, which you'll see glycerol is a simple type of sugar. But when we bond these 3 fatty acids onto this glycerol, and each one is bonded on using a dehydration synthesis reaction, we end up with our triglyceride. Okay. Now, the types of fatty acids can vary. You see they tend to be long chains of carbon and hydrogen. Sometimes these fatty acids will be lacking hydrogens and will have some double bonded carbons in them. And when you have a triglyceride that has a lot of those types of fatty acids, again with double bonded carbons in them, these are what are known as the oils. Okay, and it's not really showing so well on our figure here, but what this carbon does is it causes this molecule literally to bend instead of being straight. When there are no double bonds in the carbon, that fatty acid is perfectly straight, and these are the kind of fatty acids you find in what are called fats. Alright, and so what happens is when you have a triglyceride with fatty acids that are bent, the fatty acids don't pack in as tightly and they stay liquids at room temperature. Thus we call them oils. Whereas the triglycerides that have fatty acids that are perfectly straight will pack in tighter, and they are solids at room temperature and were known as fats. These types of fatty acids that do not have any double bonded carbons are known as saturated fatty acids. They're completely saturated with hydrogens, whereas these kinds are known as unsaturated because they're missing hydrogens. You've probably seen these or noticed these on packages of food. It'll talk about saturated fat and unsaturated fat. In general, the unsaturated ones tend to be a little healthier, at least healthier for your heart, although you'll want to get some of these guys in your diet, but not a whole lot of saturated fats. Okay, now another type of lipid are the phospholipids. And you notice they also have this glycerol. And here's a long fatty acid, and here's a fatty acid that has one of these bends in it, so it's an unsaturated one. But where the third fatty acid would be instead of having a fatty acid, we have this phosphate group, thus the term phospholipid. We'll see how they're very useful for constructing the plasma membrane or the cell membrane. And that's because the fatty acid end of these phospholipids is hydrophobic. It does not bond to water. It does not like water. Whereas the phosphate end is hydrophilic. It likes water. It has a charge, and so it will bond to water. And so that's why phospholipids arrange in this double layer with the phosphate end sort of on the outside of the membrane and the fatty acids on the inside of the membrane, because there's water here and here, but there's no water in the middle, and so the water-loving phosphate ends are on the outside and the water-hating, if you will, fatty acids are on the inside. We'll revisit phospholipids and cell membranes when we talk about cells. All right, another type are the steroids. Steroids, you can see, are completely different. They consist of these carbon rings, and this is an abbreviated formula, so they're just not showing you, but there would be a carbon here with an extra, with a hydrogen. Here's a double bonded carbon, so that would be 1, 2, 3, so there would be a single hydrogen here. Anyway, so these are these abbreviated formulas, and they're showing, you see these steroids all have these 4 carbon rings. That's what they share. But you'll notice that there are things stuck on the side, different functional groups and such, in different places, which gives these steroids their different properties. So for example, testosterone is a type of steroid, estrogen is one, cholesterol. I'm sure you've heard of cholesterol. It's in foods we eat. And these steroids are important because you can consume cholesterol and then it can be converted into either testosterone or estrogen. And of course, those are the sex hormones that determine whether an individual is a male or female. High doses of testosterone, you'll be a male, and high doses of estrogen, you'll be a female. When we study cell membranes, we'll see how cholesterol is also important in cell membranes because they're found, cholesterol is found in cell membranes, and it gives them certain properties. Okay, that's it for lipids.